2 o'clock.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for attending today's council meeting on the 22nd of June. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to point out that this public meeting will be recorded to improve access to the meeting for our community. The recording will be published, will be retained by council in accordance with council's legal obligations. So as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the acknowledgement of country and opening prayer. I hereby acknowledge that we're hosting this meeting today on the lands of the Bangarang people. I also acknowledge the traditional owners, custodians of the various lands on which we all work here today, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people participating as well. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and of all diversity of Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures, connections to the lands and the waters of Wangaratta. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, may Almighty God, we humbly ask thee to bless and guide this council in its deliberations so that we may truly preserve the welfare of the people for whom we serve. Amen.
Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attendance here in the public gallery. We do appreciate people coming to our public gallery. I will state that at the end of our meeting we have public question time, so if you have any further questions apart from a couple of written questions that we have, we ask you to step forward to the microphone here, state your name and then your question. If we cannot answer your question, we will take it on notice and answer it back to you from there. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to start the official proceedings of the meeting, and I'd like to move to item 5 of the agenda, which is the acceptance of apologies and granting of leave of absence. And mine is I'd like to remove that I myself will not be here available for our next meeting on the 25th of July, and I grant approval from my fellow councillors for my absence on that date. So I'll move that recommendation. Can I have someone to second it, please? Councillor Russell, it's the Deputy Mayor. And if there's no questions, can I have a show of support there, please? So all in favour, and the recommendation is carried. Thank you. As we move down through, I'll go to item number 7, which is the confirmation of the previous minutes of our previous council meeting. Can I look for a mover of the recommendation of those? Councillor Benton and Councillor Fuller. There's no questions from the gallery on that. Councillor Benton or Fuller, did you have anything to say? No? Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And that recommendation for the confirmation of the minutes is carried. Ladies and gentlemen, on our agenda here forward, there is no conflict of interest from any councillors that need to step aside. And as we move through, we'll go straight through to we go to Office of Reports, and we'll go to item number 13.1, Corporate Services. And 13.1 is our Draft and Fraud Corruption Policy 2023, and I'll hand over to Director Brindley to give a brief rundown and the recommendation.
Thank you very much. So it's actually not that long ago that the Fraud and Corruption Control Policy was reviewed and consulted on. And since then we've undertaken an audit which has reviewed the policy and also shared it with our Audit and Risk Committee, who also provided feedback on the policy. So we've made some further updates to make sure we're fully aligned with Australian standards, and also to be clear about our record keeping requirements regarding fraud and corruption control. So the recommendation asks for councillors to endorse that draft fraud and corruption policy and to send that out for community engagement for a period of 28 days, as it's a major council policy, to give the community an opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Director. Are there any questions from the gallery? I thank you, councillors. Can I look for a mover of the recommendation? Councillor Bustle and Councillor Grant, who seconded. Councillor Bustle and Grant, do you want to talk on the recommendation? Councillor Bustle.
This is pretty straightforward, Mr. Mayor, so I'll be interested to see what the community have to say.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant? No other councillors want to talk to the recommendation? I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Director Brindley, please, 13.2, which is our election period policy for 2023.
Thank you. So under the Local Government Act, every council is required to have an election period policy, and that is to set out the actions and decisions that can and can't be taken by councillors in council in the run-up to a local government election. And we're required to review and re-adopt that policy a minimum of 12 months prior to the next election, which would be in October 2024. So we're presenting the policy today for councillors to adopt. There's been some minor changes, just being even clearer about what some of those actions and decisions that shouldn't be undertaken during an election period are, and otherwise the policy remains broadly the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. If there's no questions from the gallery, I'll put the recommendation to look for a mover. Councillor Benton and Councillor Herry. Councillor Benton, you need to talk. Councillor Herry? No. Put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you, Director. We'll move to 13.3, which is the contract C4453 Microsoft Enterprise Agreement. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is one of Council's largest software licence agreements, which is due for its renewal to award a new 3-year contract. The recommendation following a procurement tendering process and working with Municipal Association Victoria to take advantage of collaborative procurement to get the best rates we can for Council is that the contract be awarded to Data 3. So seek councillors' authorisation for the CEO to sign and seal the contract, to disclose the contract price, and also, as there has been some increase in software licences, to allocate an additional $27,000 to next year's software maintenance budget to cover the full cost of the agreement. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. If there's no questions from the gallery on this item, I'll look for a mover. Again, Councillor Fitzpatrick, thank you. And a second to Councillor Fuller. Councillor Fitzpatrick and Fuller, no conversation on this. Again, straightforward. I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. 13.4, Director Brindley, which is the budget. Sorry, disclose the price.
Yeah, so over the 3 years, it's $1,297,018.65, excluding GST.
Thank you very much. Now we'll move to 13.4, which is our budget 2023-24. Thank you, Director.
Thank you. So the last of the report, which is seeking councillors' support to adopt the 2023-24 budget. This follows a period of community consultation, and the report includes a summary of submissions made by the community and the recommendation to add an additional $60,000 into the budget for works for the South Wangaratta Reserve. Overall, the budget contains an accounting surplus of 10.22 million and an underlying operating surplus of 162,000. As with last year, I will mention property valuations. What we use is called the capital improved value of property, which is how rates are calculated and distributed across the municipality and ratepayers. So there's been another substantial increase this year of 28.7% in the total capital improved value of all property across the municipality. Council won't receive that increase in rates, and I'll let the councillors talk to the rate rise shortly. But what it does mean is that there will be volatility again in the individual ratepayers. Rates that will be due as that, depending on where those increases are across the municipality and how they compare relatively. Just want to acknowledge that Council's financial hardship policy, as always, continues to be in place, and if anyone is suffering financial hardship, to please give our rates team a call and they can step them through the support available to them. And the full recommendation is up there on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Brindley. Councillors also like to add a point number 7 to that recommendation, and the point 7 will say The council requires officers to investigate and report to councillors potential mechanisms whereby newly identified income streams relating to pilot from solar farms is directed towards council's abilities to deliver increased sustainable initiatives. And I look for the mover of that, which will be Councillor Herry, to move that. Can I have a seconder for that, please? I'll second that myself. Councillor Herry, did you want to talk on the recommendation to see if the recommendation gets up with that extra clause number 7 in it? Sorry, I did. I'll go back to the public questions. Sorry about that one on the budget. Are there any questions from the gallery? No. Yes. So, Councillor Herry, are you still happy to move that recommendation? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. It's happy to move that motion as per the recommendation with that additional point 7, as you read out. And I'll just read it again before I speak to it, but it's that council requires officers to investigate and report to councillors mechanisms whereby newly identified income streams relating to PILAW, that's payment in lieu of rates, from solar farms be directed toward council's ability to deliver increased sustainability initiatives. So I just believe that it is a good time to put this additional item in and to further explore what potential mechanisms could be out there for us to increase delivery of sustainability initiatives going forward. We're going forward into increasingly constrained financial environments, and I think it behooves us to thoroughly understand how we can rise to the challenges that we can be assured that we'll encounter in the future. Thank you.
Lovely. Any other councillor like to talk on the recommendation? No? I'll put the recommendation to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Herry, no one else has spoken on the recommendation, which is okay. Did you have anything else to say off as finalising the recommendation? As no one else, you've got the last right of refusal to talk, even though you had the first. Yes, Councillor.
Just point 7.
On the whole recommendation with point 7 included. Oh yes, sorry. We then do need to talk to the whole budget, sorry, and I haven't done that, so we will go back to that. Sorry. Councillor Russell, did you want to talk on the extra clause on number 7 within that recommendation?
Yes, Mr Mayor, I want to speak on the budget. Before I do speak on the positive parts of the budget, I'm always disappointed when random points get put into any motion like this, so I think it's quite random. Mr Mayor, the 2024 budget sees the inclusion of the Worali Recreation Reserve multi-purpose courts, a project that has been front of mind for the people of Worali for a number of years now. I would say probably 20 years, Mr Mayor. Council was able to bring this project forward as a result of successful grant funding opportunity. And that's not without a lot of work from the council staff to be able to achieve that, and I want to make that point. This project will see the development of 2 netball courts with a pickleball overlay, lighting and all supporting infrastructure. The project is welcomed and supported by all sporting groups that currently use the reserve. I just want to make a point, when we talk about sporting investments in sporting, it's not just for the people that play the sport on the court or on the ground. There's many, many more people that watch and gather together, and it's so important for our community to have times where they gather together. And I think that's the most important part about investing in sport, is the gathering, social activities, business activities done on the side. Council remain committed to improving the ease and attractiveness for travel and visitation to Wangaratta. A third year of funding for the Wangaratta Town entrance beautification improvements has been allocated in the 23-24 budget. This funding has also been increased at the request of councillors and will see a total of $300,000 worth of works being completed, an increase from $100,000 previous financial years. I see a beautification in Wangaratta as purely advertising and welcoming people to come to live in Wangaratta. It's so important, those first impressions of a town when you come there. You won't come and it looks horrible, and Wangaratta is not one of those places now. Improving our physical well-being and providing our community groups with access to the facilities they need remains a budget priority. The Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Centre will see the major upgrades to its basketball courts, gym completed in 2023-24 budget. The upgrade will help us attract major events and serve the growing health and recreation needs of our community for decades to come. I'm certainly very, very proud of the efforts that this council and staff have put into the Bar Reserve over recent years. It's state of the art and state renowned. Over the past 3 years, council has been committed to improvement of the King Valley through the King Valley Prosecco Road Development Master Plan implementation. The 23-24 budget will see this project through to completion. This was a fully funded project, will deliver many exceptional outcomes for those in the region for generations to come. This council has never, ever, ever spent more money south of the Hume Freeway in history, and it certainly improves the well-being of all our rural communities. And particularly in times of crisis, fire, floods and storms, the well-being of all those people is so much stronger by the assets and bringing people together. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Fitzpatrick, did you have anything to the budget?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm proud that Council remains committed to ensuring that we look after one another and that our community is provided with services and support for those who are impacted by mental health challenges. In the 23 and 24 budget, we will see the continuation of the Community Elders Appreciation High Tea, which was a huge success last financial year. You know, at council, we also have a role in supporting community groups who provide valuable physical, mental and social benefits to our municipality. Next year, we will continue to distribute $170,000 through our community grants program across the funding stream of general, access and inclusion, grit and resilience and active Wangaratta. We will also provide a further $90,000 of investment in more substantial sponsorships for local organisations. We are dedicated to creating a safe, supportive and inclusive community to everyone to improve inclusion and equity. The budget provides funding for implementation of the Gender Equality Action Plan and for further development of the housing strategy, which will identify public housing opportunities for the future. This is something I'm extremely excited about. And most importantly, our young people are the future, and we will also be funding the upgrade of their services, facilities, including the fit out of a new youth hub.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Grant, did you want to talk on the budget?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I have to say that budget time is always a time where I deliberate with some trepidation, because you know, you look at what council has to do and how much money we've got, and it's not an equal thing, and there's always that balancing act to address the competing demands that we have in the community in terms of how we spend our budget, not only in the short term but certainly into the long term. And but I think, you know, all credit to the staff that have, you know, put together the budget. You know, they've been prudent, and I think that's something that we, you know, always need to keep our eye on. In terms of the council's economic development, I think there's been dollars allocated to that, and I particularly support where the money's gone to the business attraction, investment and development and support programs, which is, you know, where the council offers direct assistance to people in the business community, and I think that one-on-one help speaks very, very positively. We're now looking at the council plan and address our economic development and tourism strategy, which we're going through the consultation process now. And I think that's another example of where council has got its eye on the future, because, you know, all around us, you know, the environment's changing. There are fewer grants, there are more costs as we go forward. So, you know, I think there's always an opportunity for council to do better, but I think always it's because we have you know, so much to focus on, and we need to focus on our core business. Councillor Herry's additional recommendation where the additional income stream, I think we need to also look at what else that we can spend that money on, not just put it into one particular area. I think there are just so many things that we need to do, not just in the environment and sustainability space, but right across the board in terms of how council does its business. So I think I would just sort of put a bit of a question mark beside that one.
Thank you, Councillor Grant. Councillor Fuller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This budget acknowledges in the arts and creative space a continued funding allocation towards the Creative Precinct Master Plan, 1.18 million towards that implementation of design and so on. There's a special allocation to the Performing Arts Centre of 235,000 towards audio-visual upgrades, which is fantastic. It also puts in some efforts towards our Reconciliation Action Plan and implementation of priorities that might come out of that as we go through the process here. In the event space, we've got continued funding for attraction of new events, and we continue to acknowledge our community engagement process around new initiatives and ways to ensure we reach the wider community. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Benton.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It's in my role in the emergency area, and it's great to see that the council is going to this year be able to finally improve the relief grounds at the Wangaratta Showgrounds, and it's been funded through grant money through the bushfire recovery. It also brings the facility into more use, and it provides further use for the dollar spent down there, because it'll be able to be used by the sporting organisations there. Just to outline a little bit more on the South Wangaratta, $60,000 is in the budget for the lighting at the soccer grounds. And the point of highlight there, I think that the soccer club down there has now become one of the biggest in Australia with its junior membership, which is fantastic. The other parts in the budget I'd also like to mention is the improvements to the flood mitigation around the urban area of the Wangaratta Levy Bank, which has been now funded and it's to 3.5 million from grants, and it's also going to cover council contribution of say around about 900,000 going forward. The other parts in the I'd like to mention, Mr. Mayor, is in the probably a hobby horse of mine is the gravel resheeting has been able to be maintained at 1.83 for the gravel resheeting, and a further 2.1 million for the curb and channel and sealing and patching, major patching for the road network throughout the Shire. It is still something that I still think we can extend whatever money we can, but probably won't be enough, but we've got to be able to physically use it in the 12 months. The other thing I think is a highlight of this is the Everton tennis courts, where country tennis seems to be, when you hear a lot of people talk, dying. Well, this is a community group that is really bouncing along, and this upgrade of the Everton tennis courts has been on the agenda of this council since 2012, and it's great to see that in 2023-4 we're going to have some final improvements to that ground. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Herry, I'll come back to you as the last speaker, as the right of refusal to anything that's said, as you were the mover. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to do a bit of a recap budget-wise. So, with COVID-19, it's just behind us now. With our 2023-24 budget, reflects a time of recovery, stabilisation and growth for our community as we return back to a normal lifestyle. This budget also continues to fund delivery of the actions we committed to in our 4-year council plan to help make the community aspirations a reality and to bring council's delivery commitments to life. The 2023-24 budget allocates pragmatic funding to ensure delivery of key projects on the path ahead. We'd like to thank the community members who contributed their ideas and feedback during the public consultation week. We received 7 submissions and met with 4 submitters who requested to present directly to councillors. It's not always possible to include requests from all groups, and this budget is no exception. We've actively listened. Council's community grants program is now an appropriate source of funds for 3 of the community requests. And the next application round is anticipated to open in August. We will continue to lobby for funding assistance from the state and federal governments where possible, including having bums on seats with the CEO and myself actively go to Canberra and to Melbourne and sit with our politicians to get this funding. Key figures from the 2023-24 budget are 21.71 million of new capital works program, total of 32.46 with some carryovers from the previous year. We have a rate rise at 2.9%, which is 0.6% below the 3.5% rate cap set under the Fair Go system. We have accounting surplus at 10.22 million, and we have an adjusted underlying operating surplus of $162,000. We have no new borrowings for 23-24, which is also good. A key feature of the budget is the $32.46 million worth of capital works programs which will deliver transformational projects such as the finalisation of the extension of the Wangaratta Sports and Aquatic Stadium and Gym, development of key drainage projects including flood mitigation structures that we're doing in Newman Street as we speak, drainage upgrade, we've got the Merrill Park levy, in addition to some key recreational projects such as the Everton Tennis Courts as put out by Councillor Benton, and also the Wirralli Recreation Reserve multi-purpose courts as said by Councillor Bussell. All these projects progress our focus to ensure that what we contribute meaningfully to the economic growth of the municipality for years to come, in addition to providing improved social strength and health outcomes for our community. My fellow councillors have told you more what's on offer here today, and I applaud them. Ongoing volatility is expected in the capital works program, so I'd like to point that out, with the continuing shortage of contractors and materials anticipated to impact delivery times and costs. Council will continue to actively monitor and adjust capital works schedules as necessary to maximise delivery capacity, and we want to get these works done. Council has been extremely successful in attracting this grant funding through key projects, making ratepayer money work even harder for us, for the municipality. Major projects and funding in 2024 financial year include, for example, the flood mitigation structures, the upgrades to drainage, as I said, at 3.38 million. The continuation, as Harvey mentioned, with roads, so we'll see additional 1.55 million allocated for existing projects, and obviously the annual roads allocation for continued 23-24 budget with a further 1.5 for this. The modest rate increase at 2.9, which is below the 3.5 rate cap increase for the Victorian Fair Go system, does put stress on council's ability to deliver. However, we know we can get there and make sure that the budget works very hard for us. The projects in this fiscal stability of the rural city of Wangaratta, while ensuring continuing provision of essential services that will support ongoing economic and social recovery for our community. So in that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd specifically like to point out that we are going into tougher times. The community is going to find things tougher with increased electricity, as we said, as the 1st of July they're going up. And I urge all people of Wangaratta, spend your money locally where possible. Support your local businesses to navigate through these tough times, and support each other mentally, physically, and socially to look after our community. Thank you, everybody. Councillor Harry.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. So I'd just like to reiterate that sentiment you expressed at the end there, and touch on a couple of points my fellow councillors made before saying a couple of things myself. But just with respect to this additional 0.7 being a random proposal, I would argue it isn't, because the Pylaw figure of $129,000 in the budget in today's papers was not, it's a change, on what was endorsed a couple of months ago in that budget. So it's a new income stream, and it's a significant income stream, and I think we need to consider what we could do with that and be thoughtful about that. Just with respect to it only relating to sustainability issues, I just can't stress enough the importance that sustainability be allowed to get outside of that box and for us to appreciate how much of an economic and a social impact things often boxed in as sustainability initiatives have. I mean, we need to think creatively about this. Like, imagine we were to spend, $100,000 of that $129,000 in some sort of initiative that put solar, in the face of increasing energy costs, that put solar on the roofs of vulnerable members' households. Now, other councils have done similar initiatives and done something like that, but you're looking at more money in those households, better social outcomes, and more money flowing around the economy. So I just think thinking creatively and laterally about these things would be beneficial. And I certainly don't want to discount all the good work that has been done, that this council has done in terms of those sorts of outcomes. I mean, all my fellow councillors have reeled off a number of really positive initiatives that are in this budget, and there have been the same in previous budgets. I mean, a couple of things that do relate to the portfolio of sustainability, but some energy efficiency initiatives in council in this budget, and they're going to save council money again. It's not just about carbon reduction. EV charging outside, that's really popular. It has a lot of cars there, and Wangaratta now is not a black hole with respect to EV charging. And the climate adaptation plan, that is a really important piece of work, and while it's kind of boxed into a sustainability area, it's very much more a resilience, a community disaster kind of preparedness, and it's really a social piece more than a sustainability piece. Again, we've got to remove it from the box. And just finally, I put in point 7 with an eye to the future. Everyone has mentioned the challenges and the pressures in the offing, the 2.9% rate cap, which I'm not altogether, I have my reservations around and expressed those at a previous meeting. They just make things difficult going forward, and I don't want sustainability to be left off the table. It's often forgotten because it's put in that box, and we don't consider the economic and the social benefits that come with those sorts of projects. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor Rees.
Thank you, Councillor Herry. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'll put that recommendation to the vote. All in favour of moving that recommendation? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. We'll move down to item 15.1, and is the Environment and Sustainability Community Reference Group. I look to Director Swart to read the recommendations and then give a bit of background.
Thank you. To establish the Environment and Sustainability Community Reference Group, nominations were publicly called for in February, March, and again between April and May. And a total of 30 persons nominated for that committee. One of those nominations were withdrawn afterwards, so that leaves 12. Those 12 remaining nominations were assessed against a skills matrix. And the recommendation is that Council appoints the people listed in the attachment to the agenda as members of that committee for a term of 2 years, and also allows further nominations to be received for that reference group, and delegates authority to the CEO to make decisions about appointing future members to that reference group. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Swart. Are there any questions from the gallery on this? I'll go to Councillor Herry to further add to the recommendation, please.
Thank you, Mayor Rees. Yeah, I'd like to move a motion as per the recommendation, including the candidates as follows: Lachlan Campbell, Rosie Suter, Andy Kimber, Chris Masters, Russell Sully, Anna Lotkovitz, Tony Faithful, Will Ford, Jackie Eckhart, Monique Hilanar, Corinne Hutchinson, and Jessica Young. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for moving that. Can I have a seconder, please, to move? Councillor Fuller. Councillor Harry, did you want to talk on the recommendation?
Look, briefly, I guess just to say that this will be the first of its ilk with respect to a community reference group. So we set up the architecture for that some months ago, about 6 months probably, if not a bit more. And I really look forward to working with this group, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of my fellow colleagues in saying that, but I'd also like to thank all the nominations that have come in and people willing to dedicate their time to have a say and have input into council. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Harry. Would any other councillors like to talk on the recommendation? No, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? And the recommendation is carried. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're drawing towards the end of our meeting now. There's no special committee reports to come forward or minutes from advisory committees for noting. There's no notice of motions and no urgent business, but we will go to public question time. So I'll read a couple of questions that I have first, and then we'll refer to the gallery for questions. And again, I ask you to step forward and please use the microphone and state your name for purposes of minute taking. So, ladies and gentlemen, our first question is from Jeremy Craigill, replanning application, PIN application 23/010, proposed service station at 22 to 28 Riley Street. I would like to request that council consider amending the Wangaratta planning scheme, section 33.01-1, to increase the minimum Industrial 1Z zoning separation distance between service stations and listed sensitive uses from 30 metres to 100 metres for stations operating up to 16 hours a day, and from 30 metres to 200 metres for stations operating 16 hours a day, and 200 metres for stations operating more than 16 hours a day. I would also request that council include properties under any heritage overlay NRZ zone, or that childcare centres in a list of zones that require minimum separation distances of 200 metres from service stations. I would also like to request that council considers amending the Wangaratta planning scheme to implicitly apply the minimum land use separation for service stations in that section 33.01-1 to propose service station developments in any zone, not just in the Industrial 1 zone. This is in response to the application as I listed above, which proposes to place a 24-hour service station directly abutting 2 occupied residential homes, less than 30 metres from covered under the zone NRZ1 and heritage overlay HO20, and less than 100 metres from an active childcare centre. A clearer guideline regarding land use separation for service stations is needed, given the application distance of 100 metres to 200 metres are consistent with the current research on the effects of emissions from service stations on surrounding areas where elevated benzene and other BTEX emissions have been shown to be detectable at up to at least 160 metres from service stations. Thank you for your question, Jeremy. I'd like to now look towards Director Swart for a reply.
Yeah, I'd also like to thank you for your question. The part of the planning scheme referred to in the question is under the control of the state government, and council is unable to make the changes requested. Council also has no ability to make instant changes to the Wangaratta planning scheme without following a planning scheme amendment process, which ultimately requires approval from the Minister for Planning. More broadly speaking, amending the planning scheme requires strategic justification, which generally comes in the form of completing a planning strategy to inform the future planning scheme amendment request to the Minister for Planning. In this instance, no such strategy has been completed. When it comes to the planning, or when it comes to planning permit applications, including the one that's referred to in the question, Council is obligated to accept and process applications in accordance with the Planning and Environment Act and the Wangaratta Planning Scheme. In this instance, the application is in the early stages of being advertised and referred, and the merits of the application has yet to be considered. A merits assessment will consider a range of information, including the application, the relevant content of the Wangaratta planning scheme, community submissions, referral authority responses, and relevant sections of the Planning and Environment Act. Anyone that wants to make a submission or object to the application can still do so, and Council's website contains information about how to make such a submission.
Thank you, Director. I do have another question here, and this one did come in late, but I thank Zita Haywood for asking this question. Good morning. During recent moderate flooding on the Ovington King River, a number of people on the riverbanks requested assistance via social media as emergency services were unable to assist. Does Council have an emergency plan for these at-risk groups? Are they listed on the Vulnerable Persons Register? Who is responsible for checking on their welfare and providing emergency resources? Is the Emergency Relief Centre open to these people when their camps are flooded and inaccessible due to flood waters? If not, what is the rationale? Community members put themselves at risk to assist the homeless, and I have major safety concerns for the homeless and those who try to assist them. Kind regards, Zita Haywood. I look for Director Goonan to respond in relation to emergency services. Thank you, Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your question, Zita. This is a really difficult situation, and Council and many other organisations deal with this on a day-to-day basis. Both formal and non-formal camping along the rivers is mentioned in the Municipal Emergency Management Plan. The non-formal campers are not on the Vulnerable Persons Register, as you need a fixed home address and need to be assessed as vulnerable. VicPol are responsible for welfare of the non-formal camping areas. With regards to emergency relief centres, these are only opened at the request of the Emergency Management Coordinator, and that's not controlled by Council. If we look at recent flood events, the request has only been made once for a 12-hour period for us to open an emergency relief centre, and that was at the height of the October 2023 flooding, 22 flooding. During recent events, 2 weekends ago, Council did assist by providing camping at the showgrounds.
Great, thank you. Good answers. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's no more formal questions put in writing, but if you'd like to submit a question in person, we welcome you to come to the microphone now, please, if you would like to ask something. Thank you. And first, thanks, Jeremy.
Anne Dunstan. Currently, the Wodonga City Council and Albany City Council are in a bit of argy-bargy over the potential of the redevelopment of the North East Hospital, or Albury Hospital as it's referred to, and they're advocating for a purpose-built single hospital. Considering our hospital is actually connected into that, do you as a council have a seat on the table to help create those master plans?
It's a good question, and no, we don't have a seat on the table. I might refer to CEO McGrath. Do you have anything further to add, apart from that we, as a rural city, we advocate for great health in Wangaratta and close by. If we can get better specialist services up in Albury Wodonga to stop our residents travelling to Melbourne, we'll certainly support that way. CEO McGrath.
Thanks, Mayor. I did note that the City of Wodonga recently passed a motion saying it was going to ask 17, I think, neighbouring councils to join them in advocating for the new site. We've not had any specific direct approach from Wodonga yet to be part of that. I think we would be looking for a briefing from Wodonga on their concerns. We would want a briefing from North East Health Wangaratta to understand what their view on the matter is. We're lucky we have an incredibly strong health service here, which has had many recent upgrades. We do know there are some services, though, that they don't offer, that people do travel to the border for, and we certainly support those services being made on the border rather than people having to go to Melbourne. But beyond looking for some briefings and further information, we don't have a specific position on a redevelopment versus a greenfield site at this stage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. John.
Jeremy.
This is Jeremy Grable. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for addressing my questions that I sent in writing. I have a couple other questions. So, regarding the notification for planning application 20010, myself and my neighbors have some concerns that the scope of the notification initially was too narrow. So we were told by the Melbourne-based planning official assigned to that application that he believed written notification was only provided to, quote, 9 to 10 residences. There was no corresponding advertisement placed in the White Granite Chronicle. And we were not able to actually view the supporting documents to that application for over a week after the advertising date. It took 2 physical visits here and 8 phone calls back and forth with council to arrange just to inspect additional documents, and we weren't told what additional documents were available. We were given 1 additional document. We don't know if there are other documents. So I submitted a request for extension and it was promptly granted by council. So I thank you for that, and it was subsequently advertised in the Chronicle. My question is, what's the process by which planning concluded that such a limited number of notifications were necessary for a 24-hour service station along White Granite, the major thoroughfare? It's already got 22 objections and it apparently only went to 10 houses initially.
Thanks. I might look to Director Swart, Head of Planning, there to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. It's good that you acknowledge that people raised some concerns about the way notice was given at the start of this application process. We were able to review the notice because of those concerns raised, and then very quickly responded by saying, you know, we need to change the notice, we need to expand the notice, we need to write letters to more neighbours, we need to place an advert in the Chronicle, and also provide more time for submissions to be made. When it comes to the planning permit applications, the way notice is given to some extent is up to a judgment call by the officer that looks at that application. And a few things would be relevant there. So the first thing that we look at is, are there any specific provisions in the planning scheme that says that we don't, or we must not give notice? So there's exemptions in the planning scheme for certain things. In this case, there wasn't, so we have to give notice. Then we turn our minds to how notice is given. And one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is the application likely to, or the development, if it goes ahead, is it likely to cause material detriment to anybody? And if the answer is yes, then we give notice. Notice generally, or the Planning Environment Act requires us to give notice to adjacent landowners and occupiers. And as you can imagine, that's pretty narrow when you just look at adjacent landowners and occupiers. And then we turn our minds to, well, hang on, should we actually give notice a little bit wider? In this case, initially, it was narrow because of those judgment calls that were made at that point, but we had the opportunity to review how we give notice, and we expanded that immediately.
Yeah, thank you. I would just request that some change be made to the assessment criteria, because 9 to 10 homes initially was certainly the wrong call, and I think you are agreeing on that. I've got one more question on that application, which we have been unable to get a satisfactory answer on. Has that application already been referred to either the Department of Transport and Planning and or the EPA? We have not been able to ascertain an answer to that question.
Thank you, Director.
I'm not entirely sure to what extent we've done referrals, which is referrals to authorities. I might take that question on notice and get back in touch with you directly with an answer, if that's okay with you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions, Jeremy. Thanks, and thanks for your written question too. We do appreciate them in writing too. Are there any other questions from the gallery? No? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Please hang around and talk to any of our councillors there after today's meeting. We appreciate you all coming along to this meeting, and look forward to seeing you hopefully at another